Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our CTC online webinar. It is 10 o'clock. I will go ahead and give a few more minutes before we fully get started, so any last minute people are trickling in. Hopefully everybody can see the PowerPoint slides this time. Okay, so about another minute. Okay, it's now 10:02, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Brittany G, and I am a Manager 1 Specialist with the Certification Division. A lot of the information that I'll be covering today is similar to what was covered in the webinar from August. So if you saw the one in August, welcome back. If you're brand new to this webinar, welcome. And we'll go ahead and get started with covering information in regards to SIG. And then I'll show a couple of new things on the SIG that we input in regards to our webinars. And then we'll do a live demonstration. And just to let you all know, this webinar, we are able to record it and input it on the SIG, and I'll show you where you can locate the two that we've already done, and then the same one will be put into that the same spot. So our CTC online webpage, as you hopefully all know, if not, if you're brand new, we'd like to use the Credential Information Guide, the SIG. This is a semi-private website for our credential analysts. And within this website, it contains forms, guides, checklists, communication resources, and a lot of the information in regards to also how to submit our online recommendations. The SIG, as I mentioned, is a semi-private website. The login for the SIG is SIG 2011, and the password is CTC Guide. And when you're in the SIG, you can select the CTC Online in the left-hand menu, and I'll also show that here in a little bit. So when you're logged in, if you look on the left-hand side, you can click down on the resources to open up the accordion and all the options. You'll want to select the CTC Online Processing Recommendations link to get the information in regards to online forms, online announcements, online resources. So two of the important forms that you'll want to be aware of and possibly save is the CL896, which is to add or change an authorized designee, and the CL897, which is to add or change the authorized submitters. The authorized designee and the authorized submitter will need to be in our online database in order to submit the recommendations online. When the authorized designee submits the forms to establish the authorized submitter, CTC Online will provide the user ID and password in order to log in to be able to start submitting the recommendations. So you'll want to use these forms for changing responsibility or access. if you want to change or delete the authorized designee or the authorized submitter. In addition, if we release new credentials or authorizations, the authorized designee will need to submit a brand new form for any or all authorized submitters that are going to want to submit for that new authorization or new document type. So for example, we have our brand new emergency specialist teaching permit in early childhood education. I know, long title, but we like to go by the ETK permit. So if you would like to submit recommendations for those online, you'll have to ensure that the authorized designee submits the new CL896 form in order to establish the authorized submitters to be able to submit that new permit type. All the emails have to come from the work email to CTC online at ctc.ca.gov with the completed forms attached. Within the CTC Online Access, you can also review the roles and responsibilities of like the authorized designee or the authorized submitter. You can review your organization and keep your CTC Online user list up to date. And you can review your organization professional preparation program lists. Some extra resources that we have on SIG is the CTC online announcements. So any online alerts or news flashes can provide users with up-to-date information on specific features that we have on our online system. And there's also a list of the frequently asked questions, application checklists if you want to ensure that you have all the information needed and attached to the online recommendations. And then we also have credential types and codes that could be useful as well. The user guides, it has an overview for how to submit online recommendations. It also has information on how you can print documents or export your recommendations that you've submitted. It also provides access to help educators with how to complete the online recommendation or on how to help them log in or create their educator profile. And there's an also educator page overview with the legend. So before, let's see. We'll finish this first, and then I'll go ahead and show you all the SIG. So for the CTC online recommendations, there's going to be two different options. There's going to be the approved institutions or the approved agencies. There are some school districts and counties that have the approved institutions for like credentials. You'll want to use that section for the credentials, but if you're submitting emergency permits, you'll want to select the authorized or approved agencies. So the approved institutions, as I said, credentials, it can also be used for the added authorizations, such as the CLAD certificate. So the authorized agencies, that can be used to recommend the 30-day sub permit and then any of our emergency permits. So we have the provisional internship permit, the short-term staff permit, the general limited assignment permit, the special education limited permit. We have our emergency permits, which would be the emergency resource, emergency teacher librarian. We have the emergency CLAD, emergency bilingual. And we have the TPSL is also on there. And then, as I said, our new emergency TK permit. Well, let's go ahead and end that. Oh, let's see. Now, let me pull up our SIG. Give me just one moment. Okay. So on the SIG, hopefully you all can see that. Yeah, okay. So when you log into the SIG, again, the user ID is SIG 2011 and the password is CTC Guides. In the left-hand menu under the resources, under the CTC online processing recommendations, As you see, here's our forms. If you scroll down to the CTC online resources, we have listed, there's the user guide, and that's how to submit the full online recommendations. And then we have a guide for educators on how to, that you can send on how to complete their online recommendations. We also have a user guide for the PIPs and STIPs online submissions. The steps for the PIPs and STIPs will be the same for any of our other emergency permits. But right below those, we have our 2 webinars that we've done so far. So the one from August and the one from September. When this one is done, the October one will also be posted here. So if you ever want to go back and rewatch these, you definitely can. Just log into the SIG and then go to our CTC online resources. Okay. And then let's go ahead and do our demonstration. I don't see any pressing questions. The one, can we access the PowerPoint? So the PowerPoint will not be posted online, but like I said, the recording will be, and it'll have all those slides visible in the recording. Okay, so for the online recommendations, if you already established authorized submitter, or when you do get your new user ID and password, when you become established as an authorized submitter, you'll have to enter in that user ID to log in. From there, you'll want to enter in the social and date of birth of the educator. If you know that the educator already has documents with the commission, you should be able to enter in the social and date of birth, and it should bring you right to their profile to fill out the online recommendation to submit it. If for some odd reason it's prompting you to enter it a second time, double check to make sure that the social and date of birth are entered correctly, or you might have to reach out to the educator to make sure that it was written down correctly. That way we don't create a second profile for the educator, because then that's a whole big thing of doing 41 NCs to merge the files, and it can take much longer for the educator to complete that recommendation. Now, if they're brand new, say they've never held a document, you're now issuing a STIP, you'll need to enter the social and date of birth twice to be able to create the educator's profile. In this case, I'm using this one, which I already know has files. Oh, looks like I let it idle too long, which that does happen as well. So let's just go ahead and re-enter our information. All right, then when you go in there, enter in your user ID and password, click on the application tab. And let's go ahead and enter in the social and date of birth again. Before we click on the recommend, as you can see on this homepage, it does list on the right-hand side any and all of the documents that you've completed for the recommendation. So this would include all the educators that you've submitted recommendations for. If you want obviously to do the specific one, you can click on here or enter the social and date of birth. It's much easier to go into each individual one instead of doing that whole big list. You can ensure when you click in the social and date of birth, you'll be directed to the educator's information and make sure that all that's filled out. You can also verify fingerprint status as well. Go ahead and click the next button. So here we have on the left-hand side, the two different types. You can select the approved institutions, which would be if you're recommending for a specific credential, or the authorized agencies, which is going to be your sub-permits and any of the emergency permits. You can also see here on the right-hand side, the educator's information, the type of documents that they held. You can click on these type of documents and it will show the specific authorization type, any of the renewal codes. So I'm going to recommend for a emergency permit. So let's click on authorized agencies. Now from here, you're going to want to click on the go to create the document. And then you're going to want to click on new. Oh, give me a moment. Did it say district cleaning? Was it? Okay. So when you click on new, it's going to prompt you to enter in the white spaces, the issue date, the document title, and the county of employment. County of employment is going to be important since we're going to be recommending for restricted documents. So even though it doesn't have the little red star next to it, it is a required field. So we're just going to use today's date. You can backdate up to 90 days in order to 90 days from when the recommendation is going to be submitted. So from October, you can backdate to, was that about August? June, July. And then when you click on the document title, it'll bring up all the different titles, documents that you're authorized to submit. The cool part with this is when you're in here, you can rearrange these columns to be what's going to the easiest for you to see and to ensure that the correct document is going to be selected. You can also sort each of these categories. So if you know that you want to do the program type, you can sort it instead of clicking through all of our records. So I'm going to do a STIP. So my STIP category term, we're going to do a new type and ML, so it's going to be for a multiple subject. When it is highlighted yellow, you can go ahead and click OK. And I'm going to want to enter in the county of employment. You can type in the box or to pull it up, or you can click on the pick applet. And these ones, similar to the document title, you can move these columns around and you can rearrange and order it however you want and what's going to be the easiest for you. When you do close out of your recommendations, those categories, how you rearrange it should save. Click on go. If you do it the other way where you click on it, you can click OK. Either of those work. When the 3 white boxes are filled in with the information, go ahead and click on save. When we clicked on save, the renewal code auto-populated and then the English learner authorization auto-populated. We'll need to add in the additional authorization. And I know with the new update, our new buttons did change from the left to the right. So let's click on the new to add in my authorization because I saw that it only had the English learner authorization that auto-populated. So when we click on new, you can click on the pick applet to bring in the additional authorizations. So I know that my English learner is already on there. So now I need to select my multiple subject. I'll click OK. The added authorization date for these is not needed, but if for some odd reason you're adding an additional authorization to a document, you can click in here and add in the date. This time I don't need to, so I'm going to go ahead and click on Save. I don't need to add in any new renewal requirements since that auto-populated, but I do need to add in a restriction since this is a restricted document. So we're going to go ahead and click on New. And you have the options here. So you can click on the down arrow to select it, or you can type in it. And then for the organization, you can click on the pick applet. And like any of our other columns, these ones can be rearranged. So I'm just going to select my restriction to be El Dorado County. And then you can click on OK. Or if you type in here, if you know the name or the code, you can click on Go. So now that my restriction is filled in, I can click on Save. Now that all my information's in here, I can go ahead and click on the Next button. And then this will bring us to our attachment page. From here with the attachments, you'll want to click on Attachment. Sorry, not attachment. Click on New. I was trying to skip a step. That doesn't quite work when we need to have specific forms added. Okay, so let me cancel that again. We can click on New. And then you can click in the pick applet for the attachment name. And this is where you're going to want to choose the file. So if you choose File, then you can go to where you save the information. Click on what you want to have added, and then click Open. And when you click on when the file is input, the pop-up will automatically close like it did here. So if you want to add any comments to let us know, like, hey, this attachment's for BSR, this attachment's for transcripts, or it's for the CL 884 form, or whatever other attachments supporting documentation that's needed for that particular credential or permit that you're recommending for, you can add those here. And then you can click on Save. If you see attachments here, you're like, ooh, I didn't actually want to add that one, it was a different one, or if the scan copy when you look at it isn't legible, you can click on the Delete button, and it should prompt asking, are you sure you want to delete it? You can click on OK, and then click on New, and then repeat the steps for attaching the file that is needed. When that is all done, go ahead and click on the Next button. And then this is the final step to review to make sure that all the information is correct. So it's the correct educator, the document is correct. With like the short-term staff permit, for example, or if you're doing like a renewal of a GLAP or a CLAP, the expiration dates and stuff will auto-populate. Any of the documents you recommend, the expiration date will auto-populate. With the short-term staff permit, the analysts that are assigned to the particular document will update that expiration date. Unfortunately, that's something that cannot be updated on the recommendation side. It's something that we'll have to update on the commission side. And then similar, if you're renewing like the emergency clause or the GLAP, CLAPs, set it up like a new document, and then our analysts will go in and tie those two like renewals together. Yeah, so double check to make sure the correct document title, issue date is there, that it has all the needed authorizations, that it has the renewal requirement, and the correct employment restriction. Then when everything is good, you can go ahead to the bottom part. You have to click on Yes in order for the Submit button to auto-populate. If you click on No or you leave it blank, Submit won't appear. In order for the educator to get the email that there's a recommendation for them to complete, Submit has to be clicked on. If the Save button is selected instead of Submit, it will save in your profile as a recommendation in progress for you to go in and complete to click on the Submit button. In this case, we're going ahead and click Yes. and then you click on submit. And then when you click on submit, then it'll bring you back to the beginning where you'll enter in the educator's social and date of birth. When that happens, that's when the educator will get the email saying that they have a recommendation on file that they'll need to log into their educator profile in order to complete the online recommendation and submit the fee. Let me show you one more, and that's just going to be the sub permit. So all the steps that I showed for the STIP are going to be identical for any of our restricted documents in regards to adding that employee restriction. The sub permit is going to look almost the same, with the exception of the employee restriction. So I entered in the educator social and date of birth. I clicked on the approved agencies, and then I clicked on go to create a document. I'm going to click on new. I'm just going to enter in today's date again. And then this time I'm going to do a sub permit. I'm going to do a first time sub permit. So click OK. So in this case, unlike the STIP where it had the document term was blank, which is emergency, this one filled in emergency and it filled in first time. Now I forgot to put in the county of employment after I clicked on new, or sorry, save. I left that blank. I want to go back in and add that information in there. Before I click on the next button, I can click on edit. I can add in this information and then click on save. When it's saved, the authorization and the renewal code, similar to like the STIP that we went over, auto-populates. In this case, the sub-permit does not have any additional authorization areas, so I can just leave all that information as is. And then I click on the next button. Because there's no employment restriction, so I don't need to add that in. And then let's go ahead and add in our attachment. So in this one, you can click on the new choose file, or as I just did, you can click in the white box and it should also pop up. Oops, like this one. Click on open. And then I'm going to put in save. And then I'm going to click on the next button. And then this one again, you're going to want to double check to make sure that all of our information is correct and accurate before I submit it. Now, if I go through and I was like, ooh, that's not the correct document that I want, you can always click on the edit button and it will bring you back to the beginning with the educator's information. You'll have to click on next and then do the authorized agencies. Go to create document and then you can start the process all over again. The other way you can do that, if you realize that the wrong document is selected, there's another step that you can do, and I will show you all of that in just a minute. Let's go ahead and input our information again. Next, and then next. So you get down here. I was like, oh, none of this looks correct. You can always click on the cancel button. And it won't save any of the documentation that was just input. And instead of taking you all the way back to the beginning with the educator information, it'll take you back to the part where you just go to create a document. So if you see like, oh, I didn't mean to recommend for that sub permit, before you click on the submit or the save, you can click cancel and it'll bring you back to this page instead of hitting the edit button, which takes you all the way back to the educator's information. Okay. In the Q&A, if there's a specific document that you want to have me demonstrate, can you put that in the Q&A portion? Because we have about 30 minutes or so. Let's see. Oh, here's a good question. What is the difference between new type credential versus a first-time document? So a first-time document means that the educator has not held any previous permits or credentials with us. If they have a waiver on file or a certificate of clearance and you're now recommending them for, say, a 30-day subpermit, that would be considered a first-time document, which would be the FT. For a new type document or a new credential type, that would be someone that currently holds a permit or credential with us. So say they already hold a 30-day subpermit, you're now recommending them for the TPSL. That would be an NT, a new type document, since they already hold something with us. CBUS waiver for a sub. So we don't have the basic skills requirement waived. I mean, there's different options. If you're speaking specifically to the 30-day sub waiver permit, those are paper, not an online recommendation, unfortunately. Ooh, looks like I have a request for a PIP. So go to create a document. Click on the new button. Let's do our issue date. You know, this one I'm going to backdate to September 1st. Again, it's okay to backdate up to 90 days from when the recommendation is going to be submitted. And let's see, I'm going to do a first time PIP. Let's see, let me expand this. Will be a little bit easier to see. Oh, that's much better. So I have highlighted here, it's a PIP. We have the first time, so that means they've never held a document with us, and the ML, which is going to be our multiple subject. Click OK. And let's just do Alameda County this time. I'm going to click on Save. Now this one, when I clicked on the Save button, it auto-populated with both of my authorizations that I needed. So the English learner authorization and the multiple subject authorization and my renewal requirement. The PIP only has one renewal requirement, so I know this is good. If for some odd reason this PIP did not have both my multiple subject and the English learner authorization, I'd have to click on the new button to add in my authorization. Now say that the educator that I'm recommending for a PIP for wants to have a bilingual authorization because they meet the targeted area for a authorization in Spanish. I'm going to add that. I'm going to click, make sure it's highlighted. I'm going to click OK and then click Save. Now I have two duplicates because our English learner authorization is subsumed under our bilingual authorization. So I don't need both the bilingual and the English learner. I can delete one of those. So if it's highlighted yellow, you can just click on the delete button. It's going to prompt you to make sure that you want to delete it, and then you can click OK. So now I just have my two authorizations on there. Now I'm going to need to add my restriction because a PIP is a restricted document. And this time I'm going to do a school district. I can type in the name of the school and it'll auto-populate. Or if I click on school district, I can click on the pick applet and then I can pick my school from here. Cancel that one, cancel that one. Okay, so now all the information is listed in here. I can go ahead and click next. And then from here, you're going to want to add any of the required supporting documentation. So if they're meeting the basic skills in a way other than the CBEST, those score reports or the 41 BSR form will need to be attached here. It is recommended to include the CBEST score report just in case the scores have not been received at the commission yet. So it is highly recommended to include a copy of that CBEST score report. Transcripts would be in here, and then like the board minutes would also need to be attached. So to attach a file, click on New, click on the pick applet to choose your file. You're going to pick one, click Open, and then Add, click Save. So if it already has the same name, it will prompt you with this error says the attachment already has the same name. Do you want to replace it, or you can rename it? Just click OK in this case. Click Save. See if it gives me an error. Okay. And then you'll want to repeat those steps for however many supporting documentation that you're going to be adding into the person's file. Click on Next. Double check that all of our information is in here. So the educator's information, the document type, the authorization, the renewal code, the restriction. And then if you're like, ooh, you know what? I actually didn't want that bilingual authorization. If you click on Edit, it will bring you back to the very first page. Then you can say, I want to delete that. Delete it. I wanted the English learner authorization instead. Make sure it's highlighted yellow. Click OK. Then save. So I'm like, okay, now all my documentation is or authorization is correct. Click Next. Click Next. Everything looks good. Change this from a blank to a yes, and then click on the Submit button. And then that Submit button will send an email to our educator to log into their educator profile and pay the fee. Let's see. A GLAP. So I see a question here that says, are all the steps the same for a STIP for a special education teacher? Yes. So the steps are going to be the same no matter what type of authorization you're selecting. The only difference is when you go to create the document. Oops, click on New. You'll want to make sure that you're clicking on the correct term. So for a STIP for a special ed teacher, it would be the SE. The ML will be the multiple subject. The SL is the single subject. The steps for the recommendation are going to be the exact same. The only difference is make sure that you're selecting the correct term if you want special ed, STIP, or PIP. Okay, I saw a request for a GLAP. So when you go to click on the correct document, click on New, and then I'm going to backdate this one even further. Let's just go 8/10/22. I'm going to expand out because it's a lot easier to see. So be like, I don't remember what the title is. I'm going to sort by program name. So this one, when you sort by the names, is going to alphabetize it. So I want our limited assignment permits, which I see is here. So I see in my description is the general ed assignment. The TLA1 is going to be our single subject. Our TLA3 is going to be the ed specialist. And then our TLA2 is going to be the multiple subject. I'm going to just go ahead and click on our first issuance of the emergency permit. I see the RI here. The RI means it's going to be a renewal. And again, if they already held a GLAP or a CLAP, and they're renewing it, you can definitely submit those online. You'll just want to do the same steps as if you're setting up a new document, but you can select the RI. So it's highlighted yellow. I'm going to click OK. And let's do Contra Costa County. Then click on Save. This one, when I saved, I didn't get any auto-populated, not documents, authorizations. So I'm going to click on New. And then the authorization codes. These are all the ones that I'm able to select. If there's one on here that you're like, you know what, I really want to start submitting a GLAP for the dance authorization. You don't see it on here. Your authorized designee may need to submit a new form for the authorized submitter to add in those additional authorization types in order for it to be selected. So theater and dance, since those are new authorization codes, if they have not been added to your profile, then you'll need to make sure that that authorized submitter form is submitted to CTC online for those two authorizations to be selectable. So I'm going to do our English. I know the person hasn't completed any of the exams since it is for a limited assignment permit. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Then click on Save. The GLAPs and CLAPs don't get the English learner authorization, so I do not need to be adding that. I'm going to go to now my renewal requirement. I'm going to click on New, and then pick on the pick applet. And then it should only hopefully give you two options for our authorization codes. You can only select one at a time. So I'm going to just select my first one, click OK. I'm going to click on Save. I know that this one requires two renewal requirements, so I'm going to have to repeat the process to add our second one. So it's in here. I'm going to click on New. Now I'm going to pick on the pick applet. I'm going to select our second renewal requirement. Click OK. Click Save. Now I have both of my renewal requirements in here. Now this is a restricted document, so I'm going to go ahead and click New so I can add my restriction. I'm going to restrict it to the county. You can type in the box or select the pick applet. So now my restriction is listed in here. I'm going to click Next. Again, add in any of the supporting documentation that's needed. Click in the Next button. Double check to make sure all of our information is correct. And then scroll down to the bottom, change our blank box to Yes, and then click on Submit. Ooh, TPSL renewal. That would be a good one. Okay, let's go to Create Document. Let's see if I have TPSL renewal as an option. Now, let's say I know that the document renewal is going to be expiring November 1st of this year. I'm going to type in November 1st of this year. Go to our pick applet and I'm going to sort by title. You can click on, if you do these two little arrows, that's going to take you to the next record. Or if you click on the one arrow with the line, it'll take you to the next. It'll forward you the next 10. Here's my TPSLs, and I'm going to do a RN. So RN means that there's no break-in time. An RI means that there's a break-in time, but we do have emergency permits, like specific ones, even if there's no break-in time, can only be issued as an RI. I'm going to go ahead and click a RN. County, let's do Butte County. And save. This one again didn't auto-populate with any of our authorizations or renewal requirements. And since it's a renewal similar to any of our like emergency CLADs or GLAPs, CLAPs, you're going to set up as a new document, even though it's set up as a renewal. In my test system, I don't have any selectable authorization codes, but let's pretend something's there. You'll go ahead and highlight it yellow, click OK, and then you'll click on the Save button. See if I have any of our renewal requirements in here. I do. So the renewal requirements, if you know that this is their first renewal, it's going to be the TPL2 code, which means this is the second TPSL that's being held. If this is going to be their third TPSL, and any subsequent TPSLs after they reach the third issuance will always be this TPL3. I'm going to do the TPL2, so click OK, and then click Save. I'm going to add in my restriction. Since a TPSL is a restricted document, I'm going to and see if you notice here that the next button isn't highlighted for me to click next to. Most likely it's because I don't have this authorization code sitting in here. So if we had one here, you'll click the next button, and then the next two pages are going to be identical as to what was demonstrated for the PIPs and the PIPs, DIP, the GLAP, and the not ed specialist 30-day set permit. Let's see. Okay, looks like we've got a bunch of questions now. So I'm going to leave the screen up just in case we see any more requests coming in. Let's see here. Questions. If we apply through this online platform, do we also pay the application fee online too? The educator will be prompted at the end of their online application process. So when they log into the educator profile, they'll complete the professional fitness questions online. They'll click that they agree to uphold the child mandating reporting. They'll enter in their date, county, city, country for their electronic signature, and then they'll be prompted to the LexisNexis payment page, which will take them to the payment portal where the educator can enter in their credit card information to pay for the fee online. So the educator will complete that portion. The commission will not receive the online recommendation until the educator has completed their portion, so the online application and the fee. What type of documents are we uploading in the attachments? So the type of documents needed, it's going to kind of depend on what type of emergency permit or credential that you're applying for. So for example, if this is a brand new document, they've never held anything with us, most likely you're going to need to have the official transcripts uploaded so we can see a bachelor's degree or higher. The basic skills requirements, so how are they meeting basic skills? It could be the completed 41 BSR form. It could be SAT or ACT school reports. It could be the DBS exam score report. So anything like that. And then also if there's any additional supporting documentation needed for, say, for example, the oh my gosh, I'm trying to complete blank for the PIP. If we need the board agenda minutes verifying that that particular educator has been approved for the PIP. So all of that kind of just depends on what is needed. Now, say the person already has documentation on file that required the basic skills and the degree, then most likely we're not going to need those additional documentation since we already have it on file. And then we'll just need the extra supporting documentation, for example, like the board agenda items. Submit waivers online? No, unfortunately, the waiver documentation cannot be submitted online. So if you're applying for the 30-day sub waiver because the person has not met the basic skills requirement through one of our options, or if it's for a waiver before they become eligible for like a PIP or STIP, those are still going to have to be paper. Let's see, I see a request for a PIP special ed mile mod. I'm going to hold off on that for just a second. Once online recommendation is completed by the educator online, what is the processing time? So for these documentations submitted online, the processing time is still the 50 business days, though we are processing our online ones a little bit faster than our paper applications. But we do have up to that 50 business days. The nice part is with the online recommendations is that it's less likely to be requested for additional documentation or for like a new replacement application due to an error. And then the hope is that we are processing these online documentation a little bit faster than our paper applications. Can we still recommend someone without a COC on file? Yes. As long as the person has their fingerprints on file, you can definitely recommend whether or not they have fingerprints on file. If they do not have fingerprints on file, the processing will take a little bit longer since if we review it or when we review it, there's no fingerprints on file, the application will be sent to our fingerprint unit until we have fingerprints on file. Clarify the differences between a first-time and new credential type. So the first-time type means that they've never held the document with the commission, or their only document on file is like a certificate of clearance. Then the first time you recommend for, say, a STIP, it'll be a first time, since this will be the very first brand new document that they're holding with the commission. If they already have other permits or credentials on file, then the new recommendation will be a new type. So for example, a GLAP or CLAP, they have to hold a prerequisite credential, a valid prerequisite credential. So anytime you're recommending for a GLAP or a CLAP, it's always going to be a new type since they already hold documents with the commission. I think I have some time, a little bit of time. Let's see if we can get the PIP mile mod. So authorized agencies. I'm hoping it's available in the test system. Okay, so go to create document, click on new. Let's see, issue date. We're just going to do today. We wanted a PIP. A PIP is going to be our TC14. And I do have. So SE is going to be our special ed. And then first time, I'm going to select first time because this person's never held a document before. And I'm going to click OK. To Alameda, click on save. So with our PIPs, our English learner authorization auto-populates, but I need to go in and pick my authorization. So I'm going to click on new, click on the pick applet, and then here's all of our options for our PIP, special ed PIP. Now, because of the date that I'm selecting is after July 1st of 2022, I'm going to need to select the new disability areas. So for mile mod, that's going to be the mile mod support needs. And click OK, and then click Save. Now, the only other thing that I need to do is add a restriction because I'm not going to change my renewal requirement because there's only one renewal requirement with the PIP. And let's do school district. I'm going to type in my restriction. So all of that is good. I'm going to click on Next. Add in any of the attachments you need to by clicking New and then select the file. And then click Next. And I double check to make sure all of my information is in here correct. So it's the correct educator. I have the correct document. It's a PIP with today's issue date. My PIP is going to be for the new mod support needs. I have my renewal requirement, my restrictions correct, and then click Yes, and then click on the Submit button. Then an email will be sent to the educator. Let's see, for a 30-day subpermit, can documents be submitted in one attachment, or does each document need to be uploaded separately, i.e. the 41-4, the BSR, the degree verification? It can all be submitted in one documentation, or sorry, not one documentation. All the documentation can be submitted as one attachment. There is a maximum for how big that attachment can be, which is 10 megabytes. So if you're getting an error that it cannot be uploaded, it could be that the megabytes is too big and you might have to separate it out. Whenever you're submitting an online recommendation, we don't need to have a copy of that 41-4 application form on file. We would just need like the BSR and the degree verification. If you do separate it out, it would be helpful to either put in the comments or as the title of that saved scan copy as to what it is really helpful for our analysts when it gets assigned to them for review. Sped mile using the best way to submit for this year. Let's see, would you please complete a SPED mile mod or mod severe scenario using the best way to submit for this year? For example, should we be picking both the mile mod and the mile mod support needs? Well, it kind of depends on what document you're submitting for and what the issue date is. If it's a brand new document for a ed specialist, say for like I demonstrated just right now, the PIP. So if you're doing a PIP or STIP for special ed, if the issue date is going to be on or after July 1st of 2022, you're going to want to pick those new disability areas. So mild mod support needs, extensive support needs, or the early childhood special education that includes TK and kinder. If it's a renewal for a CLAP and they do not have a break in time, so it's a continuous renewal, the old disability areas like mod can remain on the document. I hope that makes sense. See, how do we know which permits have restrictions and what they are? So any of the emergency permits, so emergency CLAD, emergency bilingual, the emergency resource, the emergency TK, I feel like I'm forgetting one, but if it's an emergency permit where it has the EM in front of it, it's going to be restricted. Same with the TPSL. The TPSL is a restricted document as well. PIPs and STIPs are going to be restricted. The only document right now that we have listed for the authorized agencies that will not need a restriction is the 30-day subpermit. So it's similar if you're submitting a paper application and you have to fill out the file date box and section 8 on page 4, and it has to come through the employer, then that's the restriction that you're going to want to put online as well. Let's see. Ooh, coming up on my minute. Unfortunately, I will not have enough time to do the single subject PIP or STIP, but I can make a note of that for our next online demonstration webinar, or if you're attending CCAC, I might be able to show one there as well, but definitely for our next webinar, which will be, for me, will be in December. There'll be another one in November that Barrett's going to do for the tips and tricks of submitting authorized institutions. Let's see. TC1 PIP or STIP. Okay, it is noted. Let's see, let's do one more question, and then we'll be.
Hey, Brittany, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So just one note before we go. I see a few questions about the 897 form, so maybe we can include that in the next one as well. There's a variety of questions about how to fill it out, correctly, specifically section 3.2. So maybe we can make a note of that too for next time.
Yes, let's do that as well. Seal 897, 896 forms. Yeah, we can definitely demonstrate that one. Oh, yep, that was going to be the next question that I saw. Let's see. Do you prefer the document? See, would we prefer that documents are uploaded as separate attachments, one for BSR, one for transcripts, etc.? When I review for those documents on the attachments, it's probably the same for me. I guess it's going to be what's easier for you all when you're scanning and attaching it. I mean, Barrett, do you know from your experience with processing the online apps, if you have a preference, if it's all in one or separated?
Not really. It's not really a big deal if they're separated or if it's in one attachment. They each have their advantages for us, because if it's all in one attachment, that means we only have to open one and kind of scroll through and check off all the boxes for the requirements. But if you do scan them in separately, sometimes that's nice too if you label them. If you put a title on them, so we can clearly see, oh, this one's for BSR, this one's the transcripts. That's kind of nice too. So we don't really have a preference. As long as you get us all the required materials, that's all we care about.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And with that, I'm going to say thank you all so very much for attending our October online recommendation webinar. And I hope you all have a good rest of the day, and definitely look for this one or the previous ones on our CTC online, I said that backwards, on the SIG CTC online resources. And I hope you all have a good day. Thank you.